Greetings, fellow time travelers. Welcome back to Ancient Mystery, where we uncover the hidden mysteries of lost civilizations and dive deep into the secrets that shaped our world. I'm your archaeological guide, ready to take you on another mind-bending journey through the corridors of time. Today, we're standing before one of the most controversial monuments in all of human history, the Great Sphinx of Giza. This colossal guardian of the desert has sparked more debates, more mysteries, and more shocking theories than almost any other ancient structure on Earth. And what we're about to reveal today will challenge everything mainstream Egyptology wants you to believe. Before we unlock these incredible secrets, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss the ancient mysteries we're about to reveal. Picture this scene with me. You're standing in the Egyptian desert 4,500 years ago. Rising before you is a magnificent creature, 72 meters long, 20 meters tall, a lion's body with a human head, carved from living rock. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza, and it's unlike anything else ever created in ancient Egypt. But here's where our mystery begins, ancient seekers. Unlike the pyramids around it, the Sphinx cannot be carbon dated. There's no organic material, no mortar with plant remains that could tell us its age. And here's something even more shocking. There are absolutely no ancient Egyptian texts that definitively tell us who built this magnificent monument. Think about that for a moment. The most iconic statue in Egyptian history, and we have no ancient records claiming its creation. This is like finding the Statue of Liberty, with no one knowing who designed it or when it was built. Doesn't that strike you as incredibly strange? Now, conventional Egyptology will tell you with absolute confidence that Pharaoh Khafre built the Sphinx around 2500 BC. Their evidence? Well, the Sphinx sits right next to Khafre's Valley Temple and causeway leading to his pyramid. Case closed, right? Not so fast, mystery hunters. You see, there's a fascinating pattern throughout Egyptian history that archaeologists don't talk about enough, the tradition of appropriation. Ancient pharaohs loved to claim monuments from their predecessors as their own. Let me give you some mind-blowing examples. The stepped pyramid of Djoser, the very first pyramid ever built, was discovered to contain tens of thousands of stone vessels from earlier dynasties beneath it. These weren't Djoser's. He collected them from rulers who came before. But here's my favorite example of ancient power moves. 5th dynasty King Unas literally bulldozed an enormous tomb, probably belonging to a 2nd dynasty king, to build his own pyramid. And if that wasn't bold enough, he stole an inscribed block from Khufu himself, builder of the Great Pyramid, and placed it in his own burial chamber. It's like he was saying, "Look at me, I'm connected to the gods now." So here's the million-dollar question. If Egyptian pharaohs routinely appropriated monuments from their predecessors, why should we automatically assume Khafre built the Sphinx just because it's near his pyramid complex? Let's talk about something truly puzzling. Fellow explorers, the Sphinx Temple itself. This temple sits just meters away from Khafre's Valley Temple. They share some similar design features like twin entrances. But here's what will blow your mind. The Sphinx Temple appears to have been redesigned during construction. And get this, it was never finished. How do we know? Well, the interior walls were covered in beautiful granite cladding, but the exterior blocks never received this final touch. Almost all that granite has been stolen over the centuries, but archaeologists can still tell where it was placed because the softer limestone floors were cut down to seat the harder granite facing. Meanwhile, Khafre's adjacent Valley Temple received its complete granite exterior finish. So we have two temples sitting side by side, but one is finished and one isn't. Why would Khafre finish his own temple but leave the Sphinx Temple incomplete? Unless he didn't build the Sphinx Temple at all. Now, ancient seekers, we're about to enter the most controversial territory in all of Egyptology. Buckle up, because what independent researcher Colin Reader discovered is causing earthquakes in the archaeological community. When you examine the walls of the Sphinx enclosure, especially on the western and southern sides, you see something extraordinary. Deep vertical fissures and rounded erosion patterns. Colin Reader, a highly respected geologist, attributes these to high-energy water runoff from rainfall. But wait, here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Reader's analysis shows that this kind of erosion pattern could only occur if the Sphinx enclosure was excavated before the Great Pyramids of Khufu and Khafre were built. Why? Because when these pharaohs quarried massive amounts of stone directly west of the Sphinx for their pyramids, this quarrying would have stopped the high-energy rainfall runoff from reaching the Sphinx enclosure. Let that sink in for a moment. The geological evidence suggests the Sphinx predates the pyramids. We're talking about pushing the Sphinx's construction back potentially one or even several dynasties before Khafre. Now, here's where this story gets really interesting, mystery hunters. The mainstream Egyptological establishment, led by Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass, strongly disagrees with Colin Reader's conclusions. In their 2017 book about Giza, they write, and I quote, that the Sphinx is a creation of the early dynastic period is an extraordinary claim, so it would require extraordinary evidence. But pay attention to this irony, fellow truth-seekers. This is the exact same book where Hawass claims, without any evidence whatsoever, that there are secret chambers still hidden inside the Great Pyramid, and that mysterious doors in the Queen's chamber shafts might be the keys to opening these secret rooms. So, let me get this straight. Suggesting the Sphinx might be a few centuries older than traditionally believed requires extraordinary evidence, but claiming there are secret chambers in the Great Pyramid requires no evidence at all. Does anyone else see the double standard here? Let's dive deeper into this geological mystery, ancient detectives. On the southern wall of the Sphinx enclosure, you can observe something fascinating. The erosion gradually decreases as you travel eastward. Then suddenly, boom, there's a dramatic reduction in erosion right where a large natural fissure cuts across the entire Sphinx and its enclosure. This makes perfect logical sense. The fissure would capture large amounts of water runoff travelling from the west, thereby reducing the erosion beyond it. This is exactly what you'd expect to see from ancient rainfall patterns. Now, Lehner and Hawass argue that rainfall can still find its way into the Sphinx enclosure today. They cite the strongest rainfall they witnessed at Giza in 2010 as evidence of ongoing surface erosion, a foot of standing water in the enclosure. But here's the kicker, mystery hunters. In over 40 years of their combined experience, the 2010 rainfall was the most they'd ever seen. If one strong rainstorm in 40 years is the best they can offer, doesn't that actually support Colin Reader's argument that massive erosion would require much more substantial and sustained rainfall, the kind that would have been more common in Egypt's ancient past? Consider this mind-bending fact, fellow explorers. The The Sphinx enclosure has been completely cleared of sand for over 100 years in the modern era. During this entire century, with the monument fully exposed to the elements, we've seen virtually no noticeable runoff, erosion, occurring. If the erosion we see today could be created in just a few generations between Khafre and the end of the Old Kingdom, as Hawass and Lena claim, why hasn't similar erosion appeared in the last 100 years? And here's another critical point. The more durable Member 1 limestone at the bottom of the Sphinx enclosure shows less erosion precisely where a cutting was made for the Sphinx Temple. This is powerful evidence that most of the erosion in the enclosure did not occur between the construction of the Sphinx Temple and today. Think about what this means. If the erosion didn't happen after the Sphinx Temple was built, it must have happened before. This supports the theory that the Sphinx enclosure was carved out much earlier, experienced significant erosion from ancient rainfall, and only later was the Sphinx Temple added. But wait, ancient mystery solvers, the evidence gets even more compelling. Stone and mud brick walls were added to the Sphinx enclosure as early as the reign of Thutmose IV. That's a full 1,000 years after Khafre. And here's what's remarkable. These walls show conspicuously little erosion compared to the ancient enclosure walls. If rainfall erosion was supposedly creating all those deep fissures and rounded surfaces on the original walls during Khafre's era and shortly after, why don't these later walls from Thutmose's time show similar damage? They've been sitting there for over 3,000 years. The only logical explanation is that the heavy erosion on the original walls occurred during a period of much higher rainfall, a period that ended long before Thutmose, and possibly even before Khafre. Now, before you think you've got this mystery all figured out, fellow time detectives, let me take you on a quick journey up the Giza Plateau to the Great Pyramid of Khufu itself. At the base of this magnificent structure, some of the original Tura limestone casing stones still survive. These stones provide a perfect reference for understanding just how complex erosion analysis really is. Here's what's fascinating. Some casing stones are almost perfectly preserved, looking as pristine as the day they were placed over 4,000 years ago. Meanwhile, other casing stones on different sides of the pyramid show much stronger erosion and completely different erosional patterns. And remember, unlike all the variables surrounding the Sphinx and its enclosure, we can be absolutely certain about when these pyramid casing stones were placed. Yet even with this certainty, the erosion patterns vary dramatically based on orientation, exposure, and local conditions. This teaches us a crucial lesson: ancient seekers. Erosion analysis is incredibly complex, and we must be very careful about drawing definitive conclusions. So let's step back and look at the complete picture of this ancient mystery, fellow explorers. What do we know for certain? First, the Great Sphinx cannot be radiocarbon dated, and no definitive ancient texts identify its builder. Second, Egyptian pharaohs had a well-documented tradition of appropriating monuments from their predecessors. Seventh, later additions to the Sphinx enclosure show significantly less erosion than the original walls. What does all this evidence point to? A very real possibility that this magnificent guardian of the desert is much, much older than mainstream Egyptology wants to admit. Colin Reader's work on the erosion patterns deserves serious consideration, not dismissal. The possibility that the Sphinx predates the Great Pyramids is not an extraordinary claim. It's a legitimate hypothesis supported by geological evidence and consistent with known Egyptian practices. As we continue to study this eternal guardian of the desert, we must remain open to new evidence, new interpretations, and new possibilities. The Sphinx has survived for millennia, patiently waiting as generation after generation tries to unravel its mysteries. Perhaps that's the real lesson here, ancient seekers. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved quickly. They're meant to challenge us, to make us question our assumptions, and to remind us that the ancient world still has secrets to reveal. What do you think about this controversy? Do you believe the Sphinx was built by Khafre, or could it be much older? Share your theories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your insights often lead to new discoveries. If this archaeological investigation blew your mind, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Ancient Mystery. We're exploring the greatest mysteries of lost civilizations, and you don't want to miss what we're uncovering next. In our next episode, we're traveling to the buried cities of Mesopotamia to investigate an ancient technology that's baffling modern engineers. Trust me, what we discover will